As you do. We make do with what we can, Mike. We're not all I don't know, rock stars like you, I suppose.
Stop it. Here I am. This is my New York City apartment. I live in Queens and never go to the city. I also work here, so a lot of good
Queens and never go into the city. That's good. Get out of New York, go down to Philly, and then, you know, it'll actually be a city worth going to.
I would never dupe with you. I'll Bethlehem with you, but I'll never dupe.
That's fine. Listen, that was not a come to Chester and watch a soccer match. That was just to go into Philly and, you know, have a drink. Jesus. Turn down my hospitality, why don't you?
Sorry.
I'm hurt now. I know. Yeah, it's fine. Hey everybody, I should maybe tweet out that we're doing this now that we're actually on it. That would be smart, you know, maybe. But we'll do that. Great. Cool. I don't know why that went from both my accounts, but that's fine. That's weird.
Just sending you the show notes again, Mike.
What?
I just
he's got it. Mike, it's not like you don't know what's happening this weekend. If you don't, I have some exciting news for you. Anyway, hey everybody, welcome to a special playoff preview edition of the USL show brought to you by Roughneck Scarves, your home for men's national team, women's national team, USL, MLS scarves, as well as scarves for your own personal use for fundraiser. Check those guys out, roughneckscarves.com. We're also brought to you and produced by and uploaded by the Beautiful Game Network of podcasts, which we are very proud to be a big part of. Thanks to Mike Sparks for uploading and all that stuff every week. Check those guys out, bgm.fm. And feel free to check us out. We live stream every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. So if you listen to this on the download and want to actually listen to it in real time or want to get your thoughts out, definitely check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/the USL show. Anyway, it's a little later than we wanted it to be, but thus is the soccer world, I suppose. I'm your host, Evan Villela, joined by a couple of my soccer friends. First, if the USL had an equestrian, he would be our Rainbow Dash. If he hates your team, or if you think he hates your team, it's one, because you're right, and two, it's because he has the stats to back it up, making his triumphant return. Pony?
Hey, it's playoff season, and I'm loving it.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, we didn't get to... No, you were there. Never mind. I was going to say we didn't get to congratulate you on making the postseason, but you were on the show, so it's good. Also, it's the man that puts the show in show notes. He is our resident stat robot, our no longer international correspondent, Ryan Allen.
Well, it's good to be back. It finally dropped below 50 here in Greenville, North Carolina. It's the first time I've had word jeans in Scotland.
Good. I like changing seasons. That's my favorite part. Also joining us, you might have heard him before on basically any USL broadcast of merit, or a lot of college soccer or some CONCACAF stuff. I'll just stop bigging him up because he doesn't like it. But it's the voice of USL, Mike Watts. Mike, welcome back. Are you so excited to tell us that we're wrong again?
Yeah, first off, I loved it. You can go on as long as you want. That was great. But no, I'm good to go.
Now that I know you like it, I'll just stop. It's fine. But Mike, we figure, unfortunately, we don't get to hear you on the airways in a radio capacity anymore. Before we get into the playoffs, do you have any kind of just overarching thoughts on the season that was in USL?
Yeah, boy, this was as competitive as it's ever been. I think the East caught up a little bit with the West in terms of sort of the top tier. I think is the top tier of the league. I think last year you could have argued that Real Monarchs, Phoenix towards the end of last year was maybe the best team in the league. I mean, and I think top to bottom in the West, there was a little better competition level. Mm-hmm. a lot of teams raised their game.
Hey, that's
and I know, yeah, for sure. So, no, I mean, it was just a lot of fun. I enjoyed this year a lot. I've covered the league for 3 years, and this will be my 4th final this year. And I feel like every year the standard of play has improved. So, excited for the playoffs.
And not to make it about next year, but especially with the 8 million new teams and the rebrand and ESPN Plus kind of blowing up a little bit and all the new leagues that they got and all that stuff. It's been really bizarre to see it grow to what it is. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you think about what it was in 2011, this is like a Frankenstein monster version. But the other side
Seriously.
is, look, the broadcast deal they put together is the biggest platform that I think the USL could be on. And then all the local networks, I'm calling Louisville's game against Indy on ESPN Plus, and then WBNA locally, basic cable in Louisville. And the idea of that 5 years ago is crazy. And to take it a step further, for every Orlando city that's been through and now Cincinnati and eventually Nashville, there's always been the next one to take its place. So,
right.
I just can't wait to see how they all step forward.
Seriously. Guys, Eastern Conference or Western Conference first?
Flip a coin.
I don't have...
Who has coins?
I don't have a coin. I have a Talking Jacks pin. I'll flip that. It's not weighted the same. And a cheap plug for our friends, but it landed graphic side down, which means Western Conference. I didn't actually specify that, but we're going for it. So we'll start with the West. Are we doing... I guess we'll just start 1-8 and then go from there. So Saturday night, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, Orange County, the 1 seed versus St. Louis, the 8. This season, 1-1 draw, 2-2 draw. Thomason of Oldson, 20 goals in the season, leads the scoring for Orange County. And Kyle Gregg with 13 for St. Louis, who I think is questionable.
He was out in their last match. Walthall was out for their past 2.
Yeah, so a tough task for St. Louis. It would have been a tough task for anyone, really. Guys, I guess your thoughts on this one?
Well, I think this might be the year we finally break the first seed curse out west, where they've been losing every single time. I think it was Sacramento's lost to Orange County lost to Los Dos, then last year Real Monarchs lost to Sacramento. But I think the injuries to St. Louis is, if both those following Grig are out, I can't see them beating Orange County, even though they did okay against them throughout the year. If you're missing your 2 best attacking players, or arguably your 2 best attacking players against the first seed, that's a very bad hole to have dug yourself into before the game even started.
Yeah. Yeah, St. Louis is very firmly in happy to be here territory, I think, especially if you look at their last 2 years where, I think 2016 they were close-ish in the Western Conference. That I know for a fact last year they were the 9th seed, or had a chance to win and get in on the last day of the season, and now to actually get in ahead of maybe moving conferences again. Phil for sure is especially happy to be in, and I think those guys in general, and just especially with Poulos at the helm, it's a bit of validation. I don't think that there's a more than 10% chance they win, but that's all you need in the playoffs, I suppose.
Well, with OC hosting this one, they've had 11 of their 20 wins this year being victories at home, and it makes them a very tough team to try and go up against, go into Orange County and face. And it's just, for me, it's hard to see St. Louis getting past Orange County in this round.
I mean, it's not impossible. Orange County's looked a little bit shifty on defense recently. In their last 4 games, they allowed 2, 3, 1, and 3 goals. So St. Louis is starting both their strikers. I don't know. This is one of those teams that's all pending on health, I think. But if St. Louis is healthy, they're far better than 10% chance. It might be might be 60-40 Orange County if St. Louis is full force.
Yeah. Mike, you've seen both these teams.
Yeah. The thing about Orange County that I like is their midfield, but I kind of think midfield in the back is pretty well set for St. Louis too. I think they'll sit in a low block and do a lot of the things that Anthony Poulos teams do. They're a much better matchup than anybody else in the top four in my mind for St. Louis. I'd rather face Orange County the way they play, right?
Right.
Than Sacramento or Phoenix or Real Monarchs. So I almost think they got gifted the 1-8 game to an extent. I know Orange County fans won't care for that opinion because for a reason. But in terms of matchups, Herzog needs to score. Like if you're be down wall fall in the midfield, which is a giant loss, especially against Orange County's stacked midfield, then even if he is healthy, Chris Duke is a really tough out. And if you potentially are missing your leading scorer in Kyle Gregg, who I think is largely the basis of what's given to him, which will be tough based on how midfield play is. I think Orange County goes through, which is because I think St. Louis, if they're healthy all year, could have been a 5 or a 6 seed, not an 8, and maybe things are different.
Yeah, and looking at Orange County's defense, they've only had one shutout in the last 14 games. So if St. Louis get on the board early, they have a chance, but I'm not sure who scores.
I still think it's fascinating that Aiden Quinn can be under the radar, putting together 14 assists or something.
Yeah, it still confuses me to see. Yeah,
Ledesma sat on 15 for the last month, and everyone's like, "Oh, 15 assists, like league record."
And there was like 2 or 3 guys that are like right behind. Like it was because I know, like I remember, I want to say like maybe late spring or something. We were talking about him, Aiden Quinn, in some capacity on the show. I like forgot about him for 2 months, and then I just looked at the assist leaders this afternoon, and I was like, oh yeah, Aiden Quinn's like really good still. So I felt bad immediately. Like, I'm like, that's right, he's like a phenomenal midfielder. So I mean, look for him to have an impact in the playoffs for sure, because that's a guy where he doesn't nearly get enough credit for what he does, not only with Orange County, but in the league as a whole when he's been here. Saturday, 10:30, 2 versus 7, Sac Republic versus Swope Park. Pony is a resident Sacramentian. What do they call you people out there?
English sports fans.
Yeah, whatever.
We're not Cleveland or Cincinnati's bad history, but we've had like one good sports here in the last 30 years.
Yeah. Well, the Kings had that one season.
We don't like to talk about that season because of how it ended.
Well, but before it ended, it was really good.
Yeah, but
welcome
it's
to the USL NBA Western Conference Finals 2003 edition. Hope you enjoyed. Yeah, Pony, what's up with this one?
I think it's a good matchup, but with USL 2 teams like Swope Park, it depends who gets loaned down. If Swope Park sends down all their ringers who they could technically send down, it could be pretty ugly because we've seen what Swope Park did the last few years. They won the West back-to-back seasons. And I'm a little afraid of that happening because Sacramento sports, we've learned to be disappointed. But I think at the same time, Sacramento has a lot of the parts. I think their MVP is still far and away their keeper Cohen, who I think absolutely needs to be in the top 2 or 3 keepers for voting of the season. If he's not up there, I'm kind of shocked. But the defense at times is still shaky. There's a lot of mistakes. I think they advanced this round, but Swope Park is actually healthy and Swope Park sends down their top players, I'm nervous. I'm optimistic but nervous. It seems like a 2 out of 3 Sacramento advances, but they easily could go home against Swope Park back-to-back seasons.
Well, just going or looking through the Swope Park schedule throughout the season, their last 8 matches against teams who ended up in the playoffs, they didn't win any of them. They have to go all the way back to June 13th, a 3-2 result over Real Monarchs to find their last win over a playoff team, which makes it seem like this isn't the Swope Park team of years past because they're not in the 4th seed. They're not as good as what they are currently, and it makes me seem more inclined that Sacramento will grind out the victory here, especially considering in those kind of those period of 8 losses that Sacramento beat Swope Park 3-1.
Yeah, they have played Swope Park well this season. But I mean, also look at Swope Park has scored a goal in 10 straight games. And that offense, when they click, is one of the better offenses in the West, probably.
Yeah, especially with Haji Berry at the helm, who has 17 goals, the same as Cameron Iwasa of Sacramento, also at 17, both leading their team.
Mike, I'll defer to you.
Deferring your time to the human shield.
Yeah, man.
I mean, look, Swope again drastically led the league in passing. This is 3 straight years where they've done something of that sphere.
Mm-hmm.
They struggled with the small surface in Louisville. They struggled with the specter of Red Bulls and sort of the press that they gave. Spectre. Don't give me that. No, I just I think Sacramento goes through. I think in terms of ringers, I don't know that Swope really has ringers necessarily. I mean, there's some good players that are sort of tweeners, but I don't look at them as like, here comes, like the knight in shining armor necessarily. So, I think this is a game where Sacramento moves forward. I think they're pretty similar teams, which makes it a fun match. I think home field plays a big role too. I think Sacramento's through.
Yeah, the ringer for Swope Park, and it's tricky because each MLS side that has a USL team is a little different in terms of who they send down and what positions. In terms of ringers, which is like, all right, where in the depth chart are they deep, and where do I think they can send a guy? Haji Berry would have been their ringer, and he's just been there. Because I think he's an outstanding talent. And it's nice to see him be able to develop and put in 17 for Swope Park and, maybe be able to. I think there's something to be said about a guy like him getting a full year just to play games and not have to worry about, okay, well, where am I going to be next week or whatever. So, I mean, if he gets really hot, that could be a problem for Sacramento, but I don't know. Again, I think Sacramento's comfortable here. The 3-6, it was so nice that Phoenix decided to make it so that we saw it again this weekend, even though we just saw it. Phoenix Rising, the 3rd seed against Portland Timbers 2-6. Probably Drogba again, so thanks for that home field. Yeah, this is entering, maybe potential upset, maybe, but probably not territory here.
Yeah, this one to me depends on is Phoenix healthy. If Phoenix is healthy, I think they win. They don't only win this game, they win the entire West. But the question is, are they healthy? Because if they have Asante, they have Cortez, they have Drogba, and those 3 players play in every single game, I can't see any team actually beating Phoenix out West. They are that good when those 3 players are playing. But if Cortez is hurt, if Asante is not 100%, if Drogba isn't playing, they're probably slip at some point. It's just Phoenix is the biggest question mark to me in the entire league because it all comes down to if their elite players are in shape to play. I don't like saying I don't like blaming things on injuries, but if Phoenix doesn't have a good postseason run, I think you blame injuries in the end because that's really the only way I see them failing to win the West.
Well, if you look at the matches they had down in the stretch, their final 3 of the season in October with a 0-0 result against Reno, a 5-2 loss to Las Vegas, and a 1-0 loss to Portland. And it just, with Portland scoring late in the 85th minute. It just seemed like it was more like just odd fixtures that didn't really emulate how they played in the season up to this point. But I definitely agree with you, Tony, that it all hinges on if they're healthy for this match. And if they are, they not only get by Portland, they do it rather easily. And I can see them marching all the way to the final.
Yeah, I think the Vegas game's an anomaly. There should have been Vegas players sent off in that game. Cortez went off early with an injury. I don't think Drogba played. Asante didn't play. And playing in Vegas is never easy. But I still trust Phoenix to make a run if they are full. If they field the roster they want to be able to field, if they go 100% strength, they should blow by Portland and probably the rest of the West.
Imagine if Drogba wins the USL Cup on his way out. That would be fun. Like off a free kick too. like he just kind of carries them. I don't know. I won't get too fever dreamy on this one.
In terms of where I'm at, like the fever dream for I think the league is you want to see in its finale against Cincinnati and 5,000 people. Like I think, and I'm not one of these people who sits here. Oh yeah, the league nothing's rigged. Like I'm not sitting here saying.
Yeah, Mike, you trying to freeze some envelopes or whatever the USL playoff equivalent of rigging a lottery draft would be? Is that what I'm hearing? That's
but
the shadow government of USL have now canceled this podcast. So
one thing
it's been fun.
I don't think Drogba in his present iteration necessarily makes Phoenix better. And I know that sounds crazy, but they move so fast without him that, he is so technically gifted that it makes up for being 40. I get that, but he hadn't played in 3.5 months. That's a long time.
And they were doing okay.
Totally. They were taking names in the West. I mean, they were in position to take the number 1 seed in the West. And I'm not saying the reason they didn't get it was because Drogba showed up by any stretch.
Yeah.
But I do just sort of want to leave open the fact that, Cortez is one of the league's leading goal scorers. And either you need to drop him into a number 10 role, or you need Drogba to sit, in behind, which isn't necessarily the role that best fits him. I don't think that they all work together. And, again, I don't think that's a shot at Drogba.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that stands out is they went to Las Vegas 2 or 3 matches, something after Rick Shantz took over from Patrice mid-season. And Rick told us that week, he goes, hell or high water, we are going to get a shutout. I don't care if we walk out of there 0-0. I don't care. They ended up winning 1-0 or 2-0. But it made that 5-2 game a little more shocking because they went there earlier with the express plan of we're going to put out a roster and we're going to go get a win. And then they didn't do it this time. And that's a little iffy to me.
Yeah.
I think they'll get through. I've got questions.
Fair enough. The 4 and the 5, and I think one that at least Pony is a little concerned about for Monarchs. Real Monarchs SLC, the 4 seed against Reno. That's Saturday 5. I should have mentioned Phoenix and Portland actually kick things off tomorrow night at 10:30 Eastern. If I was an actual good plug for the league, I would have done that. But here I am. Saturday 5 p.m. Eastern time, which is a bit of an early kickoff. But Real Monarchs host Reno. Pony, since I mentioned you might be a little concerned about this, what's the concern?
My concern about the other 4 or 5 game, I actually think Monarchs win this one.
Or I could be wrong, whatever. I was just trying to build up suspense and it failed. It happens.
I have things to say about high-seeded teams, but the Monarchs, I think, are good. Not that team. Other high-seeded teams.
I like them too. Monarchs are good. Like you were asking us and not telling us.
I mean, it's one of those where the Monarchs are confusing. They were a team both last 2 seasons, the first half of the year have looked like the best team arguably in the entire league.
Mm-hmm.
Then they drop off. We have Reno, who is they are good, but I mean, last year we saw their playoff issue where they dropped out first round, and on the road they haven't been quite as good. And the Monarchs at home are a solid team. I'm kind of banking on a mix of the Monarchs playing at least to their mid-season level, plus Reno having a little bit of a road struggle. Monarchs are good at home. I think the Monarchs get through this one. Even we saw last year when they fell apart as the first seed, they still took Sacramento all the way to penalty kicks. I think that's almost the worst case scenario again for them, is losing in penalty kicks or losing some very close 1-0 game. I think this is actually going to be a pretty high scoring affair, but we'll see how it all shakes out. But I think I have the Monarchs, but it's a close one. The weird thing is I do think the winner of this game has a really good chance of making it to the finals, because I don't think Orange County matches up too well against offenses, especially over the last month, 2 months. Orange County's looked a little bit shaky on the back end. So I think this is whoever wins this game has a far better chance than most teams would to get to the finals.
With me, I think Real Monarchs have only lost twice at home all year. But I want to echo that I think Reno has a good chance at pulling off the upset. Here, per the ELO ratings that I posted on Wednesday, they were the closest matchup of any of the first-round matches, with Real Monarchs just being a slight favorite. In fact, Reno has a higher ELO rating, but Monarchs were just favored due to being at that home field advantage. So I'm at least going to side with Reno on this and take the upset pick. But I do agree with you, Pony, that they don't have, or that Orange County doesn't have as fair a matchup in that second round. They lost to Real Monarchs 2-1 earlier the year. They had a 2-2 result against Reno earlier in the season, and they lost 3-1 to close out the year. So it's a good upset pick that either side can make it past.
Yeah, I think, well, one of the problems with ELO is it tends to awards blowouts, which Reno is good at doing at times. But I think this is probably the closest game of the entire first round for any conference to me.
Mike, where are you up?
I'm up. Okay, I never know.
It's okay. It's all right. Listen, the Western Conference not my forte. And I figure, a guy who in some capacity gets paid to watch, everybody.
Oh yeah,
it's a little easier,
Yeah. Reno on the road this year has only lost twice, and that doesn't mean they've won a lot. It just means they haven't lost. So the funny thing to me is a lot of people say, oh, look at Real Monarchs, look at how high up they play. Reno feels the same way about their situation altitude-wise as Colorado Springs and Real Monarchs. So I throw that whole storyline out the window, and I think that's the biggest downside of what Real Monarchs did the last 2 months. I don't think it's a James and Olave problem. I don't think it's a locker room problem, that streak where they just couldn't get a win. I think they started to get some guys back, and you got to start mixing them in. And the Sebastian, of course. I think he's the best number 10 in the league when he's healthy, or top 3 or 4, the way this year played out. It's a game where I'm taking the Monarchs. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if Reno went there and upset them.
Right. And looking at Reno, they've only won 3 road games against playoff teams this year, and 2 of those are Portland. Yeah. So, and they swept Portland in over 3 games. I think road-wise, they're not quite the same. They're still good. This is probably, like I said, the closest match of the first round to me. But I still edge with the Monarchs on this one.
Fair enough. Mike, before we move to the East, if we had to make you pick a winner out of the Western Conference.
Oh, that's dark.
I know.
Because I look, on principle, I don't do this because
I know.
There and you look back, the most talented team in the West is Phoenix. Whether they win it or not, I don't know, but I think they're the most talented team.
Fair enough.
And oftentimes talent wins out.
That's all I needed. See, it wasn't that hard. You got there.
I heard my heart burns. I'm just.
I wouldn't make you do it if we all didn't put ourselves through it. So
yeah, I just had
That's-
like someone, like a Phoenix fan go like, all right, everyone pick your bracket.
Oh,
And kinda
for
like,
sure. Yeah.
Please don't make me do
The
this.
TIFO tomorrow night is going to be Phoenix Rising. Mike Watts, Western Conference champion or something.
One thing I'll say this year that like most impressed me was that being Mike Watts became a thing in the subreddit. And I think it's because I shouted it out on ESPN, the subreddit, which like I totally did on purpose. But like, yeah, being Mike Watts says Phoenix is the most talented.
There you go. Moving on to the East, I'm not going to start with the 1v8 for reasons. The 2 versus 7, however, is the 4th iteration of this year's Louisville Indianapolis Proximity Association football contest, which is my favorite thing.
I didn't know that was for like the first 3 games they played this year. It took me like till halftime in the second game to realize what the heck that was.
There was a whole one before they played each other at the end of the season about how like Abraham Lincoln played for both teams or something, and I lost my mind. For people out there that didn't happen. Neither of these teams were actually around that long ago, nor was any team in American soccer.
West Penn FC?
No, this is their inaugural season. Sorry. This was their inaugural season. Oh man, it's nice to. I'm gonna keep moving on. Yeah, 2nd seed Louisville, 7th seed Indy 11. Not only because there's that Cameron Lancaster gentleman who's decent at soccer, but going in the slugger and trying to get points there has been difficult for anybody. This season it's been 1-0 Indiana win, 2-2 draw, 1-0 Louisville win. So 1-1-1 on the year. I'll just say it should be a pretty easy Louisville win. Not that I don't think Indy can give you fits and be physical and surprise some people, but I just don't think anyone has an answer for Cameron Lancaster right now. And like we saw in their last match or 2 of the season, that's all that matters is if he scores.
Yeah, Cameron Lancaster has scored in the last 3 games for Louisville. I just see them as being such a strong team. In the playoffs, they've only lost 3 times at home this year. Granted, that match against Toronto FC2 was an off one, but the other 2 times was against Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. Basically, other really strong playoff teams. I just feel like where they currently are, Louisville is in a good spot to not only beat Indy, but make a run at the Cup and try and get to their basically 4th consecutive Eastern Conference final.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty straightforward match. I think I've said it once or twice, and I hold to it. I think Indy might be the worst team in the playoffs. It's one of those where it's kind of subjective, but I just don't have faith in them that much to make a good run. They don't have any amazing results that I could really recall off the top of my head. They look sketchy at times. They're still a solid team, but they're not built to take down the top teams in the league. They're built to be an above average solid team who just can't break into that top tier, and Louisville should easily take care of them.
Yeah, I think what's most interesting about Indy is they could change formations pretty quickly against Louisville compared to what they did last week. This is another game where you're playing 2 weeks in a row. Strikeoff and Mitchell missed that game last week. So are you getting your center back and your center forward back? If you do, can you start Starikoff in the middle and move McInerney to the wing? And McInerney's got a history with Hackworth in Philadelphia, and it seems like that sort of felt its way out last week. So there's a lot of question marks with Indy. I think Louisville should be pretty comfortable, but especially in Louisville. In it, I think a little different. And I know that's ironic for me to say, that it's like trickier on Indy's turf than Louisville's, but yeah, I think Louisville's through.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. We have the team who plays on a baseball field versus the team who plays on an American football field playing soccer. USL memes, get on it.
Oh, I don't think he needs too much too much prodding to do anything, but that'll be fine. 3v6, it's the battle for Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh Riverhounds hosting the 3rd seed against Bethlehem Steel, the 6th. Saturday, I did it again. Louisville, Indy 11, Saturday at 7:30. Bethlehem, Pittsburgh, Bethlehem, 7 o'clock Eastern start time. Regular season matches, Pittsburgh won them both 2-1 in Bethlehem, 4-1 at Highmark. They just put in those new supporters stands that go decently far away back. They're looking to fill that stadium. They're pretty close from what I've heard. So should be really cool atmosphere. Bethlehem looking to wipe a bad taste out of their mouth on 2 fronts. One, in the last time they're in the playoffs, they got smacked 4-1 by Louisville. And then the last time they played Pittsburgh, they got smacked 4-1 at Highmark. So I know Steel have been there since Tuesday. And I've already started training on that surface, which is a tricky one. So anything can happen. I just really hope this isn't one of those dull 1-0 Bob Lilly at his, inverted quotes, worst kind of games.
But it probably will be.
I hope not.
This has Lily Ball written all over it.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say about this game. It feels like it's going to be 1-0, 2-0, 2-1.
I was talking about it among goals last night. Like, both Pittsburgh and Charleston do this thing where, especially at home, they're very okay with waiting until you bring the game to them, and waiting for you to make a mistake, and then punishing you once you do that. So it doesn't matter for either of these teams, when they score, as long as they do and you don't. So, Steel really have to come out and use that youth and use the fact that they've only played 4 games and Pittsburgh have played 6, and try to get out on the front foot early and stay on it, or else this is a, pretty, you can see this being a comfortable win for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I can't see anyone beside Pittsburgh kind of winning this one. I feel like it'll be relatively comfortable overall. It wouldn't surprise me if they do that same kind of 2-1 score line from earlier in the season. But Pittsburgh advances to take on Louisville in the second round will be my pick.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh has never lost at home when scoring this season.
Can I just? I'm not sold.
That's fair.
This is one where I'm actually willing to. This is a hill I might die on, because they've lost 2 games in the last. Going back to the end of last year, and I know Lily wasn't around last year, and a lot of these players weren't. To New York Red Bulls too, high pressing style, a lot of energy. And if we're talking about ringers, the team that can send you ringers, I don't think is like a Timbers 2. I think it's Bethlehem. Like, if they get Fabian Herbers down, and I mean, if you start talking about guys that 2-way contracts, 5+ games, they have a ton of those guys. So I haven't seen
most of
3-man roster yet.
Most of the guys that are, I got something before Mike Watson. Good Lord. Most of the guys that are eligible are down.
Yeah.
And the one guy that's not eligible is Corey Burke. Not like he would be there anyway.
Yeah.
Given that, he's lighting it up for the Union right now. And obviously, as much as it might leave a bad taste in USL fan, and rightfully so, when it comes to who, quote unquote, needs that result more, whether it's the Union playing Red Bull or Steel against Pittsburgh, they're going to go, well, the first team needs that result. So we're going to put all of our effort or most of our, tools into getting that part done. So, is it going to be your whole host of ringers? Not necessarily, but Fabian Herbers is down there, Fontana and Aronson are both down there. So we'll see. It's going to be a weird blend. Obviously, we don't know what kind of directive Brendan Burke has got from the first team in terms of minutes or anything. And that's another thing that kind of impacts that. But I mean, yeah, you're right. There could be a lot of first team guys in this side. Has it mattered, at every game this season? No, because, the USL's gotten a lot better, and there's a less of a gap between MLS contracted guys and USL guys, which is great. But yeah, I mean, I agree. There could be some interesting personnel decisions, and we'll see when we get there. But I imagine it'll be a perfect 35 for 35 in different starting 11s this year for Bethlehem. So, Mike, I don't know if you saw and or heard that, but I will relay the information to you. 34 out of 34 games, different starting 11s.
Yeah, and that's not just compared to the right?
Right. Yeah, if you wanna roll the clock back like all time, Bethlehem have played, which is a nice even number, exactly 100 games, 98 different starting 11s.
Yeah, and look, Brendan Burke is an exceptional coach. I think he's really well respected within the organization in Philly. I've spoken to him probably 10 or 15 times this year through the season. And the thing that stands out to me is, like, is there a little frustration there? Like, yeah. I think his biggest frustration is getting a guy 20 hours before a game. It doesn't get used on Saturday. If not, we'll send them Sunday morning. And so they've got different triggers for pressure, and that's really difficult for them. And I think he's managed that really well. If they're already in Pittsburgh training on Tuesday, he knows who he's got. And I think the one that stands out to me is he goes, in Bethlehem, we empty the tank because we've got 50 guys who can play.
Right.
So let's empty the tank and go for it. Against Pittsburgh, that's the kind of thing that could be the difference between, getting through against them or not.
Yeah. And I don't know if he said it to you, but he mentioned it post game against Tampa. Everyone in the organization gets it now.
Yeah.
Like a guy like Matt Real, for example, hadn't played a whole lot for Bethlehem this year, came down, played against Tampa, put in a hell of a shift for 90 minutes, and Fabian Herbers literally out of nowhere wins like every aerial ball for no good reason, and it was one of those things where I was surprised by it. So, it's really interesting if you go back and watch highlights or a game from, 2016 Bethlehem Steel. And granted, there's been massive changeover in roster, but watching those guys play 2 years ago to now is night and day which is really cool to see. Anyway, not to get hung up on that. The 4 and the 5 in the East, Charleston Battery versus New York Red Bulls 2. Pony, let me try this again. You're worried about this one. Why are you concerned about Charleston?
Because Charleston can't play against New York. It's stunning. These teams have played 9 times since they've both been in the league. Charleston has won 1 game, and that was back in that's been years ago. Even Charleston with their great defense, they have never shut New York out. We see Charleston's great. This year they've allowed 9 goals to New York. 9. This is a team who allows 1 goal a game, and in 2 games they've given up 9 goals. I don't get it. I don't know if New York has their number. I don't know if Charleston just can't live up to them or doesn't match up well. But this is a game where we're looking to go, despite the better defensive team, and people know I like defense. I think defense wins the USL more than not. But this game, everything historically points to New York. They've won 4 games, drawn 4, and Charleston's won 1 all time. I don't think Charleston wins their second here. The best case is Charleston manages to maybe take it to penalties and gets lucky, or there's a red card early for New York or some random fluke, but you can't give up 9 goals to the same team and say, I'm the best defense, I'm going to beat you again on defense. Charleston needs to either beat them in a high-scoring game, which they probably can't do, or they need some interference or good ref call in their favor or something. This is just one of those games where, yeah, Charleston is probably the better team against anybody else they could have played, but New York. And New York just has their number. It's confusing, and I don't get it, but I think New York walks through this game.
Yeah, I mean, inclined to agree with that. I think Charleston is the one team in the first round that should be the most on upset alert for all the reasons that Pony stated, that you just can't give up 9 goals to a single team in the playoffs and expect to perform well against them. They lost 4-0 to New York last year at home, and I can't see something like that being easily erased. We saw their match earlier in the season against New York, and everything just points to the Red Bulls being able to advance. I mean, that 4-4 draw was absolutely insane when they hosted it at Blackbaud. But so it would have to be another high-scoring match like that for Charleston to have a good shot at advancing.
Yeah, it's funny. I think Red Bull 2 are the matchup equivalent for Mike Anhauser of a cheat day, where you're really good all the time against everybody else, and then Red Bull 2 comes around and you're like, nah, we're gonna give up some goals today.
It's a quarter of the goals Charleston allowed all season were against New York.
Yeah,
And they didn't play 3 games. This is not the fourth
right, yeah,
Exactly.
proximity association football contest.
It's not. No, luckily for Charleston, it's not. It's not a 3-time-a-year event. Yeah, the only thing that I can see Charleston having here, I mean, I hate underselling Charleston because we thought they were going to be so much worse than they ended up being. But I think if like Sventesson and Guerra can frustrate Indom or kind of fluster the relative youth of the Red Bulls, that could be beneficial for them. But if they just try to get into a shootout or anything like that, and like I said a little bit earlier, Charleston really need to sit back and let Red Bull come to them and hope that they can counter on that press, because Red Bull, when they lose, that's how they lose. And that's not just a 2 thing, that's a first team thing, that's a Leipzig thing. That's when that high press that they do doesn't work, they get opened wide, for that counter. And that could be their downfall here. I don't think Charleston are super built to do that, but it's not out of the realm of possibility at the same time.
Yeah, and may I suggest that 4-4 draw, Charleston led at home 3-0 at halftime.
Yeah.
Turning point was the red card, and then they play the last half hour down a man, and playing through a press when you're down a player, and with it being Ta Nunga, a guy that's pretty significant to how they play,
right?
That's pretty brutal for Mike Anhauser to have a 3-0 lead and then watch it evaporate, then take a 4-3 lead after it's been tied, and then blow that in the last 3 minutes. I'm not so far down on Charleston, to be honest. I think they're more built for it than they were in years past, even though Romario Williams isn't around. Like, I think they're actually better prepared for New York. All that said, Red Bull keep winning in the postseason for a reason. They scare the living crap out of you with that press, and then make 2 mistakes carry the day, and they could absolutely do that. I think this is the game that's most like the one that's like best to watch in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, I could see saying Charleston's the biggest surprise team of the season for doing good. I could even see Anheuser as the coach of the year, given that no one thought this team would be any good in the massive roster turnover. But they only won 4 of their last 13 games, and none of those were against really strong sides. And given the history, I don't think they could afford to get in a shootout, and they're playing the team who wants to get in a shootout. So they need a good defensive showing, or if they could keep like the total goals scored to 3 or less, I think they probably could get through. But let's be honest, there's been 15 goals scored in 2 games between these 2 teams already.
Yeah. If you weirdly like offense that you shouldn't expect, tune into this one.
I mean, if you're looking at other Charleston results, they had 2 really odd losses against Toronto FC 2 in September and Atlanta United 2 in October, both of which they scored the opening goal only to give up 2 goals in the loss. If you go back for
Yeah, even further. Go further. It's insane.
If you go back further, I mean, those were the only losses of their 6 this year that he kind of gave up. That they scored first and then gave up goals because the rest, I believe, were all shutouts, or they just scored an inconsequential goal like that 5-2 loss. They're already down 3-0 when they scored their first goal. But if you go to their match against Charlotte back in September, they scored the opening goal, then Charlotte came back and scored in the second half. If you go back to their match against Louisville in August, they scored the opening goal, Louisville tied it. They scored the second goal, Louisville tied it again. And so it seems like this is a team that will have a problem maintaining a lead.
Yeah. And then the 1-8, the big one. You're reigning and defending regular season champions. The best USL team of all time to this point, if not probably for a while. The 1 seed FC Cincinnati at home at Nippert playing the 8th seed Nashville SC. Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern. The fun thing here, 0-0 draw early on, 1-1 draw, 3-3 draw. So they played each other 3 times. No one's wanted to win. And Mike, I think I saw Gary Smith said that he likes this matchup.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that.
Which I'm not surprised to hear either, but I don't. I mean, I get why he likes it, and I think they've done well. But man, it's going to come down to them needing 2 goals, at least.
At least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Cincinnati 1 through 11 has more quality than anybody ever, and I don't think that's really arguable. I think they did it the right way. I think Allen coaches a really good style. Devin Kerr said this on SiriusXM on Tuesday on Jason Davis's show and got torched, but I don't disagree with they're not form. And I know it's 23 unbeaten. I totally get it. And I get the winning streak just ended and a couple of draws. That's not the point. This is not the best I've seen them. And can that come back and bite them when you're playing 4 playoff teams? Oh, yeah. Do I think it will? I don't know about that. Let's not forget that Louisville beat them at Nippert twice in the first 3 months of the season. So there is – this isn't like some totally unquenchable thirst, some monster that's never been slain. I don't think Nashville's got the horses for this game. I think there are going to be matchups down the line, whether it be Pittsburgh or Louisville especially, they're going to be more difficult. Mm-hmm. I think Red Bull, if they beat Charleston, is a better outcome too for fans.
Yeah. Yeah, no, those are all really good points. The and I don't know why I feel that way, but I feel like Nashville isn't going to have a whole lot to respond to, Ledesma and Adi. Like those 2 guys alone, I think, could really be a handful for anybody. And they've proven that. And, God forbid next year in MLS, if those guys really get a good understanding of each other, because they're going to be, if nothing else, really fun to watch. Yeah, and if this was one of those things where Nashville, even in the last 2 months, was like really consistently scoring, multiple goals and not choking away a 2-0 lead to Toronto FC2 or whatever, like then I'd be a little more confident. And it's not that I don't understand where Gary Smith is coming when he says he likes the matchup and
don't you have to say that?
You do, and I mean, but at the same time, like from his standpoint, I'm hard pressed to find a team who's done better than 3 draws this season. Obviously, since he's lost, but
I mean Louisville, obviously, but that I mean,
but I mean that's a team there next to Cincy in terms of kind of payroll, and then their consistency on the field. So, yeah, I mean, I for as much as we like to give out and say, oh well, they got to win one game in the playoffs, and then we'll take them seriously. This is definitely the most winnable matchup they've had, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Cincinnati enters the postseason having the highest ELO rating of any team in the regular season at a 12.03, just barely edging that New York Red Bulls team from 2016 at 12.02. I know Granite Pony said earlier that relies heavily on at least blowouts, and there are faults to the ELO rating system. The Cincinnati team still has a tiny bit ways to go before they can surpass that 2016 team for the Red Bulls to be the greatest team of all time. But I just think that Nashville will they may be able to give them a game with the draws, but they don't have basically the same depth that can match Cincinnati, considering that Nashville's most goals they scored in a victory over a current playoff team was a 2-0 win over Louisville, and that was it. Yeah, I just feel like they need to be able to score against this, and at most I see them getting maybe one goal, and if they get two, Cincinnati's just going to outscore them.
Yeah.
If Matt Pickens has a good game, I think there's a lot of ifs.
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions that Nashville can pose that a lot of teams can't.
So, ironically, and I'm not lying. Pony's router just restarted on him, so everybody's safe. Just kidding. Oh man, and everyone's gonna think that was a bit, but it's YouTube live stream back, and you'll see that he actually drops out and comes back on. Pony, good news. I was gonna move on and end the show without letting you get your rant or whatever on Cincy, but now it looks like we're in luck, and that can happen.
I guess they're gonna get Comcast too, because yeah, that happens at times to me. But
yeah, that's great.
Look, the thing is, I don't know what was fed at all, so I'm going to come in here blind, but
that's fine. I mean, do you really need our input?
I think Cincy does win this match. I think it's just the absolute worst matchup for them. Or if I had to call out of any one of these 5th or 8th seeds or who beat Cincy, it's Nashville. I know people say, oh, there's weird calls or the turf was bad, but 3 straight draws is not bad luck or some weird circumstances. It's a sign of a team that you match up maybe not perfectly against. Like I said, Cincy should win this game, maybe 65-35 type win to advance, but Nashville is a very solid team. I was extremely high on Nashville before the season even started, and if they're scoring now, and they have been able to score in this last month, that is terrifying because they're still the second best defense in the league. So that's my kind of fear, is they turn it around and they turn into a team that can give Cincy a run for their money. Cincy should still win. The talent is there, especially the attacking power is there. If Cincy scores 3 goals again, I don't think Nashville wins. But if Nashville scores 3 goals again, I don't think Cincy wins. It's one of those where both teams have proven they could beat the other team, and now it's a matter of who shows up this week. This is one of those any given weeks. I think this is just the game that Cincy did not want to see. I think Cincy destroys Indy, they destroy New York, they should beat Bethlehem, and I think if Cincy wins this game, their chances of advancing against the winner of Charleston and New York is actually better than their chances of advancing against Nashville. I think you could say Nashville is the 4th best team in the East. But Cincy wins. It's close, but Cincy wins.
I just posted this Sunday. Nashville hasn't beaten a playoff team since, is it May? I mean, that's a long time. I mean, that's all I'm saying. Can they win? Of course they can, but will they? I don't know. I don't think
they've lost to one since they've lost to Bethlehem, Indy, and
Pittsburgh,
Louisville.
May 30th.
Only half the field.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mike, I'm gonna make you do it again.
The East?
Yep.
No.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I'll be in Nippert November 8th.
Okay.
I think I'll be at Nippert Stadium for the final. November 8th, ESPN2, ESPN International, the Watch ESPN app. I can do this for days. This is a hell of a plug.
I'm sure
Thank
you
you.
will. I imagine that there will be times in your playoff broadcast this season where that will come up. I might even fancy a guess that that'll be uncoincidentally. But that's neither here nor there. That's just, good marketing. Mike, people know where to find us on Twitter. I will start by saying thank you for letting us bother you again, and also like late at night. But yeah, I know we really appreciate you being on. People know where they can hear you, but I hope people know where they can find you on Twitter. But if they can't, why not show yourself on that, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, at Mike Watts on air. And don't be a stranger. I enjoy this show. I enjoy many shows. But appreciate you guys having me on it. Unmasking this masked horse pony.
How about that? Right? He's a real human being.
I just imagine the Family Guy thing, horses are terrible people. Yeah. Kind of deal. So this is blowing my mind. I loved it. This has been great.
There you go, Mike. We seriously appreciate it. We in a league where a lot of the media members are fake journalists who have day jobs. It is always very nice to talk to a real journalist whose day job is doing that. And you're
a big stretch. That's a huge stretch. Real journalism.
I mean, it's a stretch because no one knows what that means anymore, but I feel like that's a conversation for a different time. Thank you guys for joining us live. If you did, thank you for downloading and listening to the episode. If you did, I'll say it again. I said it on Monday. If anyone has listened to this at any point in time, that's crazy. We just passed 1,400 followers on Twitter, which is insane that many of you care about this and appreciate it. And we would not continue to do this if we just talked to our weeks. So we really do appreciate it. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoy the playoffs. Obviously, go watch all those games. That'll be a good time. Mike will be there for most of those. Until next time, I don't know what we're going to do in terms of shows for the playoffs, but we'll figure that out and we'll keep you guys posted. But until then, don't be a dick, and we'll talk to you guys soon.